Hello, this is Tracy Murphy, and I'm giving my interview project based on the geometry standard of special right triangles, including 45, 45, 90 triangles and 30, 60, 90 triangles as well. The first group I'm going to discuss is those students who scored above an 80%, which means they demonstrated proficiency. I found a worksheet online as an enrichment for them. I liked this worksheet because it incorporated both sets of triangles inside different shapes as well. For example, the first one in the upper left, they have to use the idea of a 45, 45, 90, then using those lengths, eventually using the 30, 60, 90 to solve for x. As you can see over here, I'm going to ask the students that they select 4 of the following to do for enrichment. And again, they kind of start to increase in difficulty level, so depending on what the student is up for the challenge, they can choose one that's more basic, like number 1 and 2, or if they're looking for ones that are more difficult, like the following 2 at the bottom. The next category I'm going to talk about, or group, is those students who scored between a 60 and 70%, which means they are emerging proficiency. So they're slowly getting there, but certainly not quite there, and they need some more practice with this particular skill. I've given them several links to give them some extra practice. I've also given them links to watch Khan Academy videos, but I've made those videos optional. There's one that is on the 45, 45, 90. There's another video on the 30, 60, 90 triangles as well. And then the links that I posted on the first 2 are on IXL.com, so they are allowed to do up to 10 questions without having an account. The first one really just focuses on the 2 types of special right triangles, and they only have to go and find the length of one of the sides. The second link ups the difficulty. In this particular link, they have to solve the triangle, so they have to go and find the lengths of both sides, and they have to find the length of the missing angle. The final link that I gave them was a quizzes. In my own classroom, students certainly like quizzes and competing against one another. And this link, again, is just some more practice on the 30, 60, 90, 45, 45, 90. I would ask that the students do one of the, let's back up. I would ask that the students complete at least 2 of these 3 links that I've given them. And again, if they need more, they've got that option with the videos as well. The next group I'm going to talk about is those students who scored less than a 60%, which means they have a lack of proficiency. The first thing I would do is email the 15 students who fell into this category, inviting them via Zoom or another electronic communication to sit in on a live lesson over both sets of triangles. And at this point, I would really assume they don't understand a whole lot, so I'm starting back from the basic. In addition, with that email, I would send them a Google form inviting them for a one-on-one session to go through the assessment they did poorly on. That way we can get on together one-on-one and look for common mistakes or patterns so that maybe it's clearing up one concept that just spilled into multiple concepts for them. My first live lesson would be over the 45, 45, 90. This would be something I use in my classroom currently. I try and set up the lesson so it's a little bit more discovery. So we start by talking about what type of triangle are we looking for to begin with when it's a 45, 45, 90. I've then given them 4 different examples to walk through and find the lengths of the missing sides. Again, going back to the lesson, the first 4 are more discovery. They're given the lengths of the sides. They have to go find the hypotenuse. And my second 2 examples, they're given the hypotenuse and they are working backwards to get to the length of the legs. Ultimately, we talk about much of geometry is looking for a pattern. So we're looking for the pattern here. In this particular case, the hypotenuse is radical 2 times the leg. Moving on, I then have 10 more additional examples that we would go through. When I go through these, I try and lump those that are similar. So I would say, okay, let's look for those where we're given the shortest side or we're given the leg and we have to get to the hypotenuse. So that would include, for example, number 2 or number 4 or number 6. Number 8, which brings up a good point here. At some point, many of these students might just have issues with the radicals, so we also have a discussion on how do we multiply with radicals, or how do we divide with radicals and rationalize. And again, some of the students will pick up on those patterns, and we'll try and show those patterns to everyone as well. Then we would go look at all of those where you're given the hypotenuse. So that would be number 1 or number 3 or number 9, and again, working our way backwards. I find in my own classroom, if we can initially start with all of those that are similar, like the leg getting to the hypotenuse, and then going to the second set from the hypotenuse back to the leg, often is successful. My next mini lesson for the students would be on 30, 60, 90 triangles. Again, a development as well. The first 3 examples, we've been given different lengths of the sides. They have to go find that short leg and ultimately find the long leg by using Pythagorean's theorem. We also have a discussion that the 30, 60, 90 comes from an equilateral triangle. So that way, again, if they can't remember, they can fill in an equilateral triangle, and maybe that would help them as well. Looking for that pattern, noticing the hypotenuse is twice the shortest, the long leg is radical 3 times the shortest. I also will follow up with a demonstration of algebraically how do we come up with these formulas. So I would label my side of that triangle to be 2x. I would drop in that height, and we would go through again algebraically finding each one of those pieces. The second part of this again is some more practice, same approach that I had with the 45, 45, 90. We would go and look for any of those where you starting with the short side. So that would include number 3, number 4, and number 6. Again, probably another discussion about how do we multiply with radicals to get to that long leg. Then we would come back up to number 1 and 2, because going from the hypotenuse back to the short leg is relatively easy, just dividing by 2, and then rounding it off those that are more difficult. Excuse me. Finally, I'm going to give them the same links that I gave the students who scored in between a 60 and 70%. Again, asking the students to complete 2 of the following at the top between the 2 IXLs and then the quizzes. Again, optional videos in case, again, they still need some more instruction. Finally, what happens with those students who have not completed the assessment at all? The first thing I would do is email the students and the parents that the assessment needs to be done within 24 hours. I would attach a Google form for the students to complete as well. Let me know that the assessment is completed or when they will be completing it, or let me know their current status, as in I've been sick, I forgot, whatever that might be, and what their intent is in terms of finishing that assessment. Finally, if there's no response at all, then I will make a phone call to both the student and the parent, again explaining that the assessment has not been done and when would we be able to complete this assessment. That is the end of my interview presentation for addressing the needs of the different students with regards to the standard of 30, 60, 90 triangles and 45, 45, 90 triangles.